in my presentation is to take you on where the world of technology is going. What do we see is happening around the world? How can you take advantage of it, and how can you be able to take this into the higher level and understand clearly you should be able to ride on these horses. As we all know, the world in technology, whatever works, is already obsolete. We have to start thinking of new ideas, new ventures, and new things that will take us to another level, right? And as we all know, the world is moving faster than we think. If you think you know where the world is going, believe me, fasten your seatbelt for a nice ride, right? And we're living in a world whereby we are having moving in an exponential pace, right? So now the question that I want to ask is, what is exponential? What do we mean when we say that the world is moving in an exponential pace? We human beings, as we come up, we are wired to think in a linear fashion, right? We are wired to think in 1 step, 2 step, 3, 4 step. If I tell you 30 doublings or 30 steps from here to the wall, you're not going to get out of this meter hole, right? But if I tell you to take an exponential steps, I don't think we all have the power to understand what that means. To take you into this, let me take you into the world of chess. I know a lot of us here have understood chess before, and they already have about 64 squares, which is 8 by 8. And if we look at it, at the end of the day, we just have about a possibility of 64 squares, right? Now, this is a strategy game, as we all know, and this game has been up and running for centuries, right? So taking you back into India, and there's this strategist called Lahore Sesan, who is teaching a king who has lost multiple battles a strategy on how to play the game. So the king understood the game and he liked the game very well. He decided to reward Lahore Sesan. Person, Lahore him to use the chessboard and say, okay, sir, what you're going to do for me is you're going to give me 1 grain of rice for the first square of chessboard, 2 grain of rice for the second square of chessboard, 4 for the third, 8, 16, 32, 64, and we keep going that way. When we reach the first part of this, at the 20th board, Lahore is already having 1 million grains of rice. And when we get to the 20th square, he has 1 billion grain of rice. The king, by the way, and any of us who is thinking in a linear fashion will not really understand clearly what is the impact of the ask that Lahore did to the king. Now, things start getting really interesting. When we get to the 32 square, which is half of this chessboard, there's 4.3 billion grain of rice, right? Now, this is the part whereby when we take it back to the technology world, we call half chessboard. When you hear people talking about it in the IT world, they say half chessboard, they're talking about 4.3 billion and above, right? Now, it does not stop there. At the 40th square, he has 1 trillion grain of rice. And when we get to the 64th square, this is a really huge number, right? We cannot even conceive it. It's called quintillion. It's like probably the grandmother of trillion, right? So he has 18.4 quintillion grain of rice. Can anyone here in the team has any idea how much rice does Lahore is asking for the king for his reward? The size of this room? Will it fill a Boeing 747? Or is it just a truck? So, looking at it and quantifying it, Lahore is asking for enough rice to cover the whole of India on a 1 meter thick. Arguably, That's the size or the mass of the entire earth that we have. Well, we don't know how the story ends. One version of the story said that Lahore was rewarded abundantly, not exactly what he asked. And another story or version said that Lahore did not live to see the reward. All right, now we have already understand what it is to have, what is exponential? What does exponential mean? What does it mean if I take 30 doubling steps from here to that place? Exponential steps. It is 4.3 billion steps all the way, and that is equivalent to 26 times going around the planet Earth. And that is what is one of the reasons for my talk today is for you to appreciate the way the technology is going. And this is how fast it is going. We, you, me, as human beings here, we are wired to think in a linear fashion. I have a strategy in my head. I'm going to have this book today. I'm going to read these steps. I'm going to go to this place. That is how we all think, and that is how we are wired. But the technology world is going in a totally different way. And the difference between us here as linear thinkers and those that are thinking in an exponential way is the opportunity that we all have to start thinking on how to capture. And that is where the technology world is going. Now, coming back to the world of technology, looking at it, we all know that for us to be able to be useful in any way, we have to look at how computers think, right? The computational power of how computers think, how they're able to give us the result that we're looking for. And we have seen this exponential trend has been going on for quite some time. If you look at this graph, it's a log graph. It's showing you from 1900 all the way to the 2000 how exponential computational power is growing, right? And this is not stopping, right? When we hit a physical property in one point or the other, we take it to another level, right? And then again, it's the same thing. We talk about gigabytes and all that we have in our phones or in our hard drive on computers and all that. It's the same trend that we are seeing, right? On almost every 18 months, we have this doubling going on, right? So I can think and I can store in an exponential way in the technology world, right? Now, to put it in a perspective, this is a 5 megabyte hard drive in the 1950s from IBM that is going to be taken in a Pan Am airline from one job site to the other. And when you move further, you can clearly see that we have a 210,000 times the capacity of that. And it will still go into your pocket, right? This is how the exponential world is going. This is 210,000 times. Can you imagine that? And the same thing we're seeing with the internet speed, right? The internet now has grown so much that the ability for everyone very soon in the next decade to have a gigabit connection to everything and everyone is coming in. We have the 2G, the 3G, and we have the 5G. To put it into perspective for you, you'll be able to download a 2-hour movie in less than 3 seconds on a 5G. Right? So, and it's not just people that this connectivity of 5G, 3G, internet, and all that is coming in. It's connecting things, right? And that's one of the things that we at Cisco, where I work, we said that Internet of Things, meaning that your refrigerator, your car, your DVD player, and every other thing, your phone, everything will be connected and they will all be working together, right? This is exploring a lot of business opportunities, new business models, new skill sets to learn, right? There's about $12.3 trillion of revenue to be captured into that. Wouldn't we want to be part of this? Wouldn't we want to capture this kind of value out of it? So now we talk about all this exponential growth of storage, of networking, and as well as of the computational power. So what? What does that mean to me? What does it mean to you, me, as people, as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as startups, as innovators, as enthusiasts? What does it mean to us, right? And that is the heart of the entire presentation that I have today, right? For you to be able to know, how do I capture this? What are the opportunities that are lying ahead of me that I will be able to capture and impart value? So, looking at it, we think in linear, technology works in exponential, right? And all of the business models that we've been having around and all the big companies that we have these days are thinking in a very linear fashion, right? So there is a gap between thinking in an exponential way or the way the technology is going and the linear fashion in which the human is thinking, right? And that gap can be an opportunity for all of us to be able to capture, or it is a disruptive stress to big companies that have been milking and been running on the linear fashion, right? So how can we take this? This is where we see the entrepreneurs, the startup, the tech enthusiasts, you here are taking advantage of and coming up with novel ideas, right, to capture this value there. So these days, you see a lot of startups coming up. Imagine like a well-established, over 100 years decade of business running in yellow cab taxi in New York City. You have a couple of guys sitting in their garage, and they're able to disrupt completely that business. And they own nothing. They absolutely have no car. They have no asset. They were able to get this and disrupt the entire business model. And they have grown so far beyond New York City, and they're over 160 countries as we're speaking right now. And they have a huge valuation of over $100 billion, right? We're talking about Uber here, right? Which is a ride-hailing company, right? What have they taken advantage of? They've taken advantage of the internet, they've taken advantage of the computational power, the storage, and all that, and they see that there is a gap here that can be filled, that New York taxi cab has not been filled, right? And as I'm saying, this is not something that they do because they're sitting out there back in the US or in Silicon Valley and they achieve this. No. This is something that everyone can take advantage of. We all know this, right? Anyone here who has been around 25, 26 years know that Kodak was the main thing, right? Kodak had over $29 billion market capitalization. They've been milking that for quite some time, but at some point in time, 12 guys came up with nothing into a digital imagery business, and they disrupt Kodak, right? There was Canon there, but Canon pivot and went into lenses and all that, and they're still in the market, right? That is one thing that they know how to change the game when the market disruption started coming in. So, again, we have seen this with another company called Airbnb, right? Which owns nothing, right? They own no property. There's a Marriott group who has been there for 88 years, and it took, because of taking advantage of this exponential technology, it took them 4 years to actually overtake Marriott Group, right? Which is having 690,000 rooms, while Airbnb came in 4 years, they were able to beat that number. And not just that, the penetration, which is very important, right? The penetration of being able to expand into multiple countries, because I don't need to worry about real estate, building, all that. I don't need to worry about logistics. I just need to digitize it. And that is something that we all have to understand, right? When we digitize things, eventually they get to demonetize, right? The cost tends to go down exponentially. And when they demonetize, what will happen next? They democratize. Democratization is being able to have everyone, you, me, everyone. The woman in the village is now currently having access to a cell phone because it's democratized, right? And those things that are coming in, and we've been able to have this exponential power going on and being able to have demonetization and dematerialization of technology has taken us to this, right? Every other thing there that I used when I was a kid now can fit into your pocket, right? Now, we talk about the disruptive power, we talk about the gap between how you'll be able to take advantage of all of this disruption to have a startup we can see that even able to start up an internet-based company like Uber, Netflix, and all that, it's going down. The cost is going down, which is the blue line you have seen now is going to less than $5,000, right? While the rise of a lot of startup has come really high, right? And this is where we see a cluttered number of unicorns. Unicorns are companies that are valued more than $1 billion, right? We can see before, they're kind of scanty, but they get so cluttered there that now we have over 449 companies that are valuated more than $1 billion, which we obviously call the three cover club, right? And you can see as much as them from $10 billion all the way down, right? And now it is very easy because you have access to people, you have access to the internet, you have access to people, the rising billion, the number of people that you can have access to are much more higher than before because of the internet penetration. You'll be able to have access to fund. You'll be able to have venture capitalists being able. The only thing that stops you, it doesn't matter where you are, the only thing that stops you from being what you actually envisage to be and taking advantage of this is how great is your idea. You can see the number in dollars of the funds that have been going by venture capitalists to sponsor your ideas and get them up and running, right? And we have these rising tech trends that are coming in, and this is exactly what I do back in Cisco, right? It's the convergence of all of these technologies to change humanity, prosper humanity, and help the government achieve citizen welfare, job creation, and all that. And one thing I'd like to leave you up with is that currently we have about 7 to 8 billion people on the planet, right? The number will pick up to 9 billion, and then it will start skyrocketing down, right? Now we have about 5.19 billion people connected to the internet. You have access to them as much as I have access to them. All you need is internet and a laptop. You can have your idea heard, funded, and everything. And this number is growing 9% year over year. Do you really conceive what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years? We will have the whole population of the world being connected to the internet. Think about how much idea will come in, how much knowledge will be shared, how many people will be inspired, how much business opportunity do you have? You have access to this 8 billion people on the planet. This is something that we all need to come up and take advantage of. The rise of startup. Now we can see places like France being a startup nation, and places like Estonia called the startup nation, because that is where the whole world is going, right? Taking and rising advantage of all these things. So my call today is take advantage of all these things. Be an entrepreneur, start up something unique, and celebrate your own uniqueness, discover your niche, and thrive in this age of digital opportunities, because the opportunities is as far as we can think. Thank you very much.